So now that we have this basic form set up with our own input component, let's adjust this to also be able to react to user input and to get the user input. So for that, in my input component, each element, of course, should receive an onChange listener. So let's add one to each of the elements we are creating here. So I'll go through all of them, and I just use an IDE option where I can place multiple cursors to add onChange to all of them. And of course, I don't want to handle that change in this component. I expect to get a method reference from outside, which then takes care about this. So here I'll simply add props, and I'll name the property changed. And you can, of course, choose any prop name you want. Now, changed is the name I chose. So in contact data, I now actually need to implement a method which reacts to the changed property. So where I can fire up on changed, which I can pass to the changed prop, which then in the end will be attached to the onChange event. So for that, I'll create a new method in my contact data component. I'll name it input changed handler. There I expect to get an event object, as it will automatically be passed to me by React if this method is attached to an event listener, which it of course is. So the input changed handler is what I pass to the changed prop, this input changed handler, no parentheses as always. And now here, I want to first of all log the event target value to see any output and see if it's generally working. Let me type something into your name. I do see it here on the right, also for the zip code and also for the dropdown. So we do receive that value. We connected it successfully, but of course we can't see the values in our inputs because what's missing is the other part of two-way binding. We're not using this data here when the input changes to update the value of our elements. And of course we have that value key for each input element, which we bind to it. So this is currently the key which determines the value which is shown on the screen. So we need to update the value for a given input upon user changes. For that, of course, we need more information than just the event, which gives us access to the event target value. We also receive or need a second argument, which is the input identifier, so that we can reach out to our state, get the right element here, the right object, and adjust its value. So to do that, I'll go to my contact data component, and the method I passed to changed, the reference here, should be a reference to an anonymous function, so that I can now pass arguments to the input changed handler method call. In this anonymous function, here we now get this event object, which is created by React automatically. And I want to pass this on, but I also now want to pass my identifier, which is form element ID. That is this ID, which is just a key from our object, and that's exactly what I need. These keys here in our state object, these are the identifiers of the inputs and exactly the objects I need to adjust it. Now, of course, I can use that information to update the value. The problem just is, I of course can't access this state order form identifier and update the value. This is not how we mutate the state. Instead, we have to mutate it, well, immutably. And we do this with setState. And for that, what I'll do is, I'll first of all create or copy my form data. So from the state here, my order form, I'll copy it. So I'll name this updated order form. And for that here, I will now create a JavaScript object where I copy this state order form. However, this does not create a deep clone. So I copy that object and I distribute all the properties. I get a new object, but since in these objects I have more nested objects, these would not be cloned deeply, but there I would again just copy the pointer to them, and hence if I change something there, I would still mutate the original state, unfortunately, because the object in my copied object and the object in the state would still be equal. So we need to clone this deeply. How do we do that? Well, in the end, I only care about the value here. So I only need to make sure that this object here is also cloned and I don't point to the same object anymore. I can achieve this in my input change handler by not just distributing the properties of order form, which would be name, email, and so on, but that I also copy the properties inside my selected order form element deeply. For this, I'll take the updated order form, which is a clone of the original one and not referring to the original one anymore. And there I'll now access my input identifier. So this is a value like email, like delivery method. Now I get access to this object, which we haven't cloned already. So now I need to clone that object and I'll store the new constant, updated form element maybe. And here again, I'll create a new object and use the spread operator here to create a clone. Now I can safely change the value of the updated form element because it is again a clone. Only if I were to change the element config, that would still be an object which I haven't cloned, which points to the original one, but I'm not doing that here. If you are doing that, you need to also clone that deeply with the spread operator. So I will reach out to updated form element value and set this equal to event target value. And now I can take my updated order form, so this, which is my cloned original form, and there I can now again access the input identifier and set it equal to the updated form element. Now with this, I can call this set state and set order form to updated order form. Now let's see if this works. If I save this and I go back to my application and type something into your name like Chris, you see this works. Let's try it for all these inputs there. Let's also try the dropdown. This is all updated, so two-way binding is now working. Now we successfully set this up in a very generic way, which is great. Now let's turn our heads towards form submission then.